So you push record
Just like that.
and it starts.
Well, I can't believe it. So I think I told you just before we hit record. So I talked, this is going to be a couple months ago. You came up. I was just sitting around thinking, man, I'd like to talk to someone. I said, man, I'd love to talk to Luke. He's not like a pipeline guy. And Marie's like, yeah, I'd definitely talk to Luke. Like, for sure. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah, okay.
So I know you're not part of like the energy community directly,
Yes.
but man, you grew up in Calgary. So
Yeah.
how do you separate it?
Yes.
So I'd say every single person in Hillhurst, where we're sitting right now, knows the name Ramage.
Okay, yes.
So back up a little bit. I would love it if you just introduce yourself. Give us the story of who you are.
Wow, okay. Well, my name is Lucas Ramage. I'm a resident of Calgary, inner city Northwest, born and raised. And in a nutshell, let's say I grew up in the community of Briar Hill. I guess I reference locations because in my world I come from a real estate family, and it's all about, where people are from, I guess, and perhaps creating context of their life situation. So I grew up in, I laugh actually about where we're sitting here because as I've recently done a couple moves, which is a rare thing for me, in my whole life, I've lived in a very small section of the city of Calgary here. Like we're talking like a 3-kilometer radius. Basically, I'm 47 years old. So I grew up going to the public education system, kind of did a variety of different jobs in my late teen, early 20s. Did quite a bit of travel through those years and a lot of, different service, kind of some church life stuff happening. And I came into what was, my family business was real estate. So, and again, it's all anchored to location so much. I know the original Ramage Realty offices were actually in this building, I believe, actually.
Oh, funny.
So, so lots of different little locations in and near around here. It's like everywhere you turn, there's like a story that could be told, it feels like to me, in terms of like a connectivity to the city, right? So I am intrigued that this is pipeline orientated, and so I guess beyond that, what more can I say? I've been now a realtor for like 23 years, and I'll just leave it there, and we can ask and answer more questions, I suppose, and see kind of what direction you'd like to take this. And I know, you go.
So I grew up in a family business, so you just kind of go into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just took it for granted. I was always kind of going down this road. Was it the same for you, where you just were always destined to be where you are, or?
Not at all. Yeah, I'll share at least my thoughts there too. So, so getting into the family business, it was certainly always, I would say, an option, or at least there was an awareness. As a young person growing up, it was just a question that was always asked of me: are you going to get into the family business? Because at that time, my dad was a realtor. His dad had been a realtor as well. So when I say Ramage Realty, the original was my grandfather, Eric Ramage.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so in 1972, my dad was working with Ramage Realty with his dad as well. So it was natural for people to always ask me, so it would cause one to wonder that, maybe one day. But I did feel like I aspired for different things. And I referenced like some church life stuff happening in my early 20s. I was at that time working downtown in a role as a youth program director at the church. And I felt really called to be living life somehow in that capacity. However, life's bumps and turns. I had an early marriage that ended very quickly. After 1 year, I was married and divorced, had a real tumultuous season of things. Happy to share more personally on things, again, in terms of however you want to guide this conversation. But deciding to retreat at that time into the family business and say, you know what, I'm going to become a realtor. Because with wherever you are and whatever you're doing, I consider, your work is the hours spent of your life, and
For sure.
and how do you want to spend those hours, and then who do you want to spend those hours with? And I realized very much like I felt I could serve in a variety of different roles, probably successfully, but I really wanted to work closely with my family and my mom and my dad and my brother. They were all family business at the time, called the Ramage Group. And so, and because of the life circumstances, just feeling the pain of that whole life breakdown, the kind of startup attempt I feel that I had, I kind of came into the business feeling it for, a season of time perhaps, not anticipating like I would be 23 years later saying, I'm a realtor. And in this career path now, I feel like 100% I'm doing and living life one day to the next as I am meant to be. Yeah.
But like people so define themselves by their career, they find their own identities there, and I'd say you're no different. But I think a lot of your personal gifts that you have, Luke, for other people, and the spirit of helping, and the social media, everything about you is a gift that would probably find you in any career you ended up in, I would say.
Yeah, I share a lot on this. I mean, again, now I got young men in my life, teenagers, 19, 18, and 16, well, 15. I got 3 kids, but as we have a lot of these conversations about, career and what you're doing and what you're going to do. And I'm very much one who believes that, we all are equipped with special skills, talents, giftings, interests, motivations, inspirations. And, the context of where those are demonstrated can be found in your world of work. As you found your way into your work environment and you bring to it your special touch, your DNA, your unique fingerprint. And so, in things you've kind of referenced, like creativity maybe in social media, let's say, is a neat expression for me at times, just to have a place to, I would have, in the past, I've called this the art of real estate, because I consider myself an artist, so having a creative, artistic approach to whatever you're doing. So it just happens to be real estate that I conduct myself in terms of having an income, and that's kind of where I found myself.
But you've taken it in so many different directions. Like I have a lot of exposure to real estate for myself through Sweet Marie and whatnot, and what you're doing online with the social media and the video, like it's like something I've never seen other people doing. Like, how did you get into it? Was it simply just a work thing, or because you've taken it in a totally different direction, I think? Yeah,
thanks. Like everyone, I'm trying to find my way in this modern world and kind of engage with these tools in ways. I say it that way because I know it's like it's a struggle and a challenge. How about this? I know this. You have a mental health sort of. I haven't looked deeply into some of the recent things you've been doing, but I know as we kind of dabble in these tools of creation, the big problem is getting lost in it and getting sucked into it. So I guess to be more current to today, to talk about what that looks like, it's always that challenge of the authenticity to express what's really going on, and also too there's mottos kind of incorporated, like don't take yourself so seriously is sort of an important undertone really, that is like if you post a goofy reel, that speaks multiple messages, I guess you could say. And then like anyone else who's a creative, though, there are momentary blocks, and you kind of get stuck sometimes wondering, like, okay, are you doing something just because others have applauded you previously and said they really love that, and you keep trying to create content to match previous work? And so, it's a daily exercise in deciding how you're going to show up and what you're going to put out into the world. But I think when you consider what is your message, that should be an important part of what is the message, and so and I give thought to that in a big picture kind of a way, and I hope it shows up in small little ways. I call them kind of like breadcrumbs. It's never gonna. My novel of life is not going to be demonstrated in a 10-second reel, but the accumulation of all the things that you do and you spread it around, if there's a message there, people will get curious and they'll find you, and then they might want to know what you're about.
Well, I think it's that simple. Like people like I don't want to say the word celebrity, but in that real estate space, just because I follow you so much, I don't see other people doing it. I think it does attract people because they would like to get to know you. I think the amount of effort you put into it, I get it, because I know how long it takes me to edit these and go in the background and help work with Rochelle and posting them. So I can't imagine how much time you spend on your stuff every day.
Well, thanks. And at the same time, I could talk at length about this, of course, but it's like the progress, not perfection, is an important reminder for everyone. I often will say, it's in the iteration of an idea. It's, because we can all get hung up on perfectionism perhaps, and feelings of like, this is not exactly what the vision was, and so these things can stall your efforts to put that content out there. There's a great book called the War of the War of Art, so flip of the familiar. Stephen Pressfield, but that was a really compelling book to me, that it's that same kind of messaging of like, just show up, suit up, show up, and do your best almost, and ship it in the end. Seth Godin has been an inspirational author to me, and that's like one of his messages is like ship it. Real artists ship. So don't wait for perfection.
I know one thing I've tried to do in my own life, and I would say I'm like a good public speaker, but even when I post for jobs to try to help other people find jobs or do a mental health post or do something, most of my posts, it's either on the first take, and I try to be very conscious to do it on the first take or the second take if I really flub it.
Yeah.
And my thinking is, if I'm being sincere and I'm being authentic and genuine in what I'm trying to tell you, I'm hoping that comes through the camera. And I don't know if it always does, but I share that with you because you did one a couple of days ago. It was just like a little dancey thing in front of a bench, and I was kind of watching. I was like, "Oh, that's cute." I know Luke probably felt like an idiot, kind of doing that right on 14th Street. And then I looked in the background. I was like, "Oh, that's the Pipestone building. Oh, that's amazing. That sounds good. Yeah, Luke, let's go talk." And I thought it was so great, but I could envision you doing this little dance. You're like, "Oh my God, what am I doing with my life?"
Yes. I joke about the modern real estate and what we find ourselves doing at times. So.
Do you ever envision dragging your kids into the industry?
Well, I mean, I tease that idea all the time, and certainly with them, it's that same follow your heart, and also know that things don't have to be perfect. I think there's that fear and hesitation to like engage and take a misstep, and I just more than anything now, I would say to anyone is like fail as often as you can. Fail more. Don't be afraid of failure. Right? I think we all got to know that.
But as kids, like that's awful. Like you are living the spotlight effect for real on social media, and just the self-consciousness of youth. How do you encourage your kids to just say it's actually bullshit, guys?
Yeah, well, like you and I both probably, I mean, I can't imagine being this age generation growing up in that environment, and when things are just really magnified, it is really a new world, and so if you know the how, let me know.
Oh my God.
Because I certainly am learning my way here, like all of us.
I think I'm the same as everyone. I've heard other people have said it, thank God we didn't have social media when we were younger people, because the amount of dumb shit I did, Luke, I forget about, okay, it's behind me. No witnesses, I moved on. But these kids, they are not growing up in that world, unfortunately.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So what is next for you after real estate? Because have you ever envisioned a life after real estate?
Well, honestly, so my dad is retired now, and he's been sort of a forerunner for me. He's been a coach and a mentor for me, and so I've certainly, my mom and dad, they've worked together for many decades. So I glimpse that life trajectory, and I have, known that, in life, you kind of can pursue direction that way, and so, but that is what's beyond real estate is your question. For me, I've literally thought I'll potentially work till the day I die, and I don't feel like I'm not in this as a stepping stone to something, let's say, and believe me, not to say that I don't look forward to some days of more retired like living perhaps, but I mean, honestly, it is really important to do something that you love doing, right? So if I won the lottery, would I continue to sell real estate? I don't imagine so, but there's a lot in this industry that I've been raised through and seen, and I have a passion for, and so to see continued growth in some capacity in this field that I love and has served me, I guess I'm a spiritual person, right? So in the end, I'm just looking for how I can be of service, and if I've been provided a skill set here which puts me in demand, and it does, I find it like something to just marvel and be thankful for, is that if I can be of service, I will be of service, and so I know in real estate that can continue till the day that you die, right? So in the sense, my dad now is a retired real estate agent. I service our family clients still, right? Like it's and there's a connection there still. He's not active, of course, in this, and I look to him and I actually marvel, because in that same way, I recognize how many men, he's 73, retire, and within years, they go, because they've lost a purpose, So I've been really curious, because, if there's ever anyone I've known who's wrapped up as what I would see your identity as your profession, he seemed to embody that to me to an extent. And then so to say you're no longer a licensed realtor, how are you doing? It's like, couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier. Doesn't think, I think I marvel that I think to myself, really, wow, I can't actually imagine being unplugged to that extent. But you have to have other things that you love, other things, passions and hobbies that you are interested in, right? So, and he has a collection of those. So I don't know what's beyond real estate for me, and I can only see so far down this little road. I think life is like the headlights on the highway, and I can kind of see into the first few months of 2025 right now.
It's funny. So you do work in an industry though where it doesn't have like an age cap.
No,
Like other industries that do have some ageism issues, whether it's technologically or AI, all this kind of stuff where you kind of, I don't want to say age out, but there is.
Oh yeah.
Real estate's not like that. Like if I find a realtor who's been at it a long time, has got some gray hair, and I know he's the guy, that's a positive thing.
Of course. Yeah.
So when Greg, your father, when he retired, like, and you lost that as a mentor professionally, I assume personally you haven't lost that.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Have you had the opportunity now to turn around and give that mentoring back to this next generation coming up behind you, personally or professionally?
Thank you. Yeah, I've arrived more in that space now. Again, with my age and years in the business, I'm finding that opportunity. There's a younger agent now working with me in his mid-20s, and I really love connecting with newer agents. And I'm in a brokerage now that actually. I made a big move. I don't know. I'll get into some of this stuff, but
please.
From the brokerage model that I was in was what I'd call an old school model. This new model that I'm in, it's designed in a way to actually for myself to monetize even off revenue share off bringing agents into this new brokerage. But what I value about that, and I do look at my dad as someone who I say, if this had existed for him 20 years ago, his residual income or retired income would be quite different by what he has done naturally, which is just being someone who's a longstanding member in the industry, has coached and mentored lots of people just out of a generous heart and sort of again a passion for the biz. Now when people call me and ask with an interest to get into the business, in the past I wasn't established in a space that I could give some general ideas and direction, but it didn't allow me to really partner with them and mentor them. And so now this new brokerage model, and I have like 7 agents who are in my network, it gives me the chance to mentor and apprentice them really and see them in their success. It becomes my success in time, right? So I'm happy that this is like a new thing that in my career didn't exist for my dad's career. And I see the next 20 years, and I do believe like I'm a 40-year plus kind of destined to be selling homes for this length of time. So I think the next 20 years will be more towards the coaching, mentoring, expanding the business in that way. But I still just love being frontline. It's kind of like, and I'm not a Wayne Gretzky, I won't pretend that, but when you hear like there's certain players who are just on the field, like I love being on the field, and I'm not always the best coach because the way I approach the business, because I'm like bootstrap on the ground, opening doors, meeting people, get in person. And then so I'm doing like what you're doing here. I've mentioned I'm aspiring towards more of this to kind of transmit that message in a wider way. But at the same time, I'm finding my way, so yeah.
I wonder like if you haven't been, the mentoring side, whether it was because you didn't have the experience or was it just like the self-conscious thing, you're just afraid to speak up and you're kind of a humble guy, I would say, so how do you get that message out where it's like, what, maybe I do have something to offer this next group coming up? Yeah.
Well, hey, this is something in life I value, is always, how about this, spin the conversation more towards that mentoring role. For me, I call them the pillars of my life, like it's an important thing. And that, like, the holistic approach to that is, of course, if you seek that and you have that, and I have various mentors and pillars in my life. And my father is one of them, and I have others as well. Very important. So I hope to become that to others as well, and then also certainly not just in the professional capacity, but in personal ways too. So I'm involved in 12-step recovery world. I know that you know that, and that we actually use some of the same language in this brokerage model. We call it a sponsor-sponsee type of a scenario. And that designation is really intended to be someone who has some, and then I'm going to put this into the 12-step wording, but some experience, strength, and hope to offer, talking about your story, what happened, what it's like now. So I do have those people, those sponsees in my life, people that I share, how do I do what I do? And that much of it is on the professional, but how to be living a balanced life as well. That's always my goal, is like balance. So this is the thing I think a lot of people pursue, like a mentor to be like a top producer in the real estate industry. And I've honestly, will have to admit, I've less aspired to be the number one, because I know what number one means in a production capacity in terms of your lifestyle and balance of life. I hope to be a balanced human being and have the best work-life balance that I can. Right. So some of that more falls into those who would look to me personally for some guidance, direction. Maybe not interested in real estate. So yeah.
No, fair enough. Like, I appreciate you sharing the 12-step thing, because I think I phoned you. I think it was back in May, and you're one of the first people I thought of. I think it was my very first foreman meeting. So we got up on site in camp, and one of the foremen approached me and said, "Yeah, Dave, I'm listening to your podcast. I appreciate what you're doing. Yeah. I've been trying to get sober.
Yeah,
and there's no meetings at camp. Yeah, and all of a sudden, can you help me get this meeting?" I'm like, "For sure." He's like, "I'll lead them because I've been to them so long, but how do you, can you help?" Yeah, sounds good. And I remember thinking, well, I just say, I have no idea how to help. So I'm like, okay, well, let's try to get the guy a room and get some books. And I think you're one of the guys I phoned to say, Luke, just talk to me for a few minutes, because I don't know what I'm doing. And you've been so incredibly open about this recovery, addiction, and a variety of other things. So this is a common theme that in the past people haven't talked about for a variety of reasons, whether it's they're embarrassed or pride or whatever. Yes. But you're describing an issue that's, I don't want to say it's an epidemic in the industry I work in. Yeah. But it's right under the surface, Luke. Oh, yeah. So I am so grateful for you trying to help me through. And it was great. Actually, by the way, it was very well received. And we got a few meetings into it. And we had some private rooms twice a week. And about 3 meetings in, we figured out very quickly, drinking drugs is the problem, but that's not what's bringing people here. What's bringing people here is support and being surrounded by people that understand. And, I can't even remember how many times you didn't leave the room where you weren't crying at some point, because people were not talking about drugs and drinking anymore. They were talking about, loss of relationships at home. They were talking about financial strains. They were talking about physical and sexual abuse from when they were kids and stuff like that. And it was a remarkable, just that room, being in that safe place. So again, I can't thank you enough for, you actually did something very kind, not just for me, for a large group of people, and I'm hoping that those meetings continue to grow. Wonderful. Yeah. So one other thing that strikes me about you when I think about you is how you've incorporated a real physical wellness component, not in just your life, Luke, and you share this very openly on social media. It has nothing to do with real estate, nothing to do with anything. Tell me about that journey of health for you and where that came in. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks. I'm glad, and again, curious how this all is for your podcast, because I had not listened to earlier episodes, but I know you as a person, and this is, I think, why we are connected, because we have similar interests, I guess, and understandings, maybe, perhaps, but I'm almost compelled to share this, and I will, because it's current for me in terms of an understanding, or at least a perception or an idea, but it relates to pipelines as an analogy for like a sort of I'm going to call it a spiritual idea that I have, but because that's an important connecting piece to why any of this other stuff really too. But for me, I describe myself as a spiritual person, but we all are, I believe. But that is, I love science, truthfully, and I'm fascinated with this universe that we're in. One of the things I love to say is like just simply the reality, like what's really going on. Michael Singer is one of my
kind of guru authors that I've read many of his books, Untethered Soul being one of them, but just to ponder the question, like, what's really going on, like take a zoom out and say, we are floating on a rock in an infinite universe for a moment of time, and I have this conscious awareness. And, putting things in the big picture, that certainly helps you not take yourself so seriously as well. But from one day to the next, keeping that connection, though, for me, I have, made a daily, and I hope to be like a lifetime pursuit of understanding what that really is, and so but the pipeline analogy is, though, that like it's an important thing to be connected. I see it as a pipeline when I think about a connection to a power greater than myself, and so and that pipe connection, I need to keep that clear, and if I keep that clear, it puts me in a state of being which is peaceful, happy, serene. And I feel connected, And then most importantly, then it allows me an opportunity to connect with other people, right? And in that pipeline capacity, and I'm not a pipeline expert, but I see these like pipes of connection, and there's blockages that can kind of fill those pipes, And so the work that I have to do daily is to like keep the pipeline clear so that that connection can be flow and fluid, And so the people that are in your life, when we have that connection, it's an experience that is the most real thing for me, one day to the next, So when I talk about seeking authenticity as well in these things, I'm averse to, I'm going to say the more material, like the glam, again, that can come with the imagery of what is somewhat associated to real estate at times, is the way we present as agents. I'm not attracted to that. It's not me, So anyways, I wanted to tie in that pipeline connection bit because it just came to mind as I was sitting here, but I think of this, on the daily regularly. The recovery piece and the health piece, this is all, if you want a 4-hour Joe Rogan style conversation, we could talk as little or as much about it, but definitely, health is, what is health? Health, I think in you stating that, it's perhaps, I've had a health journey as it relates to my life. About 9 years ago, I had a big surgery and an operation, and it just really decimated me physically, like in a very real way of, rather near-death kind of an experience, and I can talk about that. But coming out of that hospital and being, a stick man, really, having no weight to me, and having doctor's orders to gain weight was like a directive. And so, I've always, and I posted on this here recently, but just saying, if I give any tips to anyone, and again, on the physical influencers out there in the social sphere, there's a lot of messaging about, the foods to eat and the exercises to do and stuff like that. My suggestion that was occurring to me is just like, fall in love with fitness. Like, what does that mean though? But health, just like I've just had a passion to be active, like, and being active daily. Again, what makes you hit your pillow at the end of the day and have a good night's sleep, right? So, and if you find those things like that work one day, well, do it the next day, And so I'm a creature of habit like everyone, and so I like to have that, mindfully kind of build into the day the things that are essential for me to be in that state of calm and an ability to connect with other people. And, if it worked on this day, well, let's do it again the next day, And so, I become quite habituated in time about the things that are important for me one day to the next. And very often, and I consider it like that jar analogy, you hear, university professors have these front of the classroom talks where it's like, what are you putting into that jar, each day? And then you only got these 24-hour time capsules. And for me, I see them like ping pong balls. The real key ones that I want to incorporate is like this prayer and reading and meditation to start the day. I always want to make sure like I have a physical regime or routine, something like an output that physically will actually make me sleep at the end of the day, So, and I can go on about that, but there's, people get caught in spirals all the time, and those can be tailspins downward sometimes, but, so you're with the right tools in place and the right people kind of connected around you, it can spin you up in the other direction, that you have in spite of yourself, not because of yourself. You're doing things that are moving in the direction, hopefully that you're intended to go. So,
like, how important is it for you to be surrounded by good people?
Yeah, well, it's extremely important. Yeah, and for me, and we were talking about kids, and I think to myself of how, these online forums and the virtual Zoom kind of world that we live in, there's a connection of types that happens there for sure. And that's sometimes when you're looking to get new communities around you, that can maybe be a start point to it, to draw you in closer. This, as we're doing now, though, the belly-to-belly, face-to-face, person-to-person, being in a physical space with a person, how important is that? I think it is absolutely essential. When I think about, I've been very reflective of life as of late, because I've had some major transitions, as you know, and then that when I look back and now meet lots of different new people who have had different life journeys, the common thread I just keep seeing is like how the people you meet design so much of where you're going to go, right? So to surround yourself intentionally with people that you see what they have, and this is again an expression borrowed from recovery rooms, is like saw what they had, willing to go to any length to get it. So I've always hoped to identify people that have something that I'm drawn to, and like yourself, and maybe like what you're doing here is going, what makes this person tick? How what makes become interested, right? Like and being interested in other people that you aspire towards. Yeah, it's one of the most meaningful things, I think, probably for all of us.
I think so. Like I'm sure I've told you this story before, I've told others, but this would be about 10 or more years ago. Marie and I were sitting around talking about, like, now as parents, you understand why it's so important that your kids are around other good kids.
Yes.
And that conversation literally segued right into looking at our own lives and go, oh shit, like it's as important or potentially more important that we are around good people as an adult, and you forget about that.
Yeah.
So we didn't really realize it at the time, but it's like, oh my gosh, like we need to be conscious, more conscious than just float through life.
Yeah.
Like we need to be around good people because it affects every area of our life, whether it's spiritual, physical, health, emotional.
Yes.
And it's just literally by being surrounded by good people.
Yes. Yeah. That just makes me think something I've been reflective of here recently as well, is like that, and we're about the same age, and again, I'm 47, and you can look back and go where I'm at and where I've arrived, and all the people. It's just a rich tapestry. It's a garden of people, and I'm grateful for that. And I meet, however, in the last couple of years, I've met new people, like, and at any age, at any moment in time, the next room you walk into, your next future best friend could be there, and that's something can be nice to know about that, because maybe that's for anyone who's feeling alone or isolated or something like that it's not over. Your collection of friends it's a never-ending journey, right? And it's evolving all the time, right? So, but I've met this woman. I helped her sell her home recently, and she's a retiree in her probably 80. And just a fascinating life story. Again, I get to hear lots of life stories, but it was neat to hear this person retire in her 60s and then started gardening. And it was in the horticultural community that, and at that season of life, from her 60s to 80, it was all her garden friends were the ones moving to Victoria, and this is her world. And I just go, wow, that's neat. What is a new hobby? And then you can have some new connections, and life can have a whole new meaning. So it's exciting.
Oh, that's cool. I had just before I came here this morning, I met my friend Rudy Stein, who you might have known. So his dad is a realtor, basically up until to the end.
Yeah.
So he's been gone about 10 years now.
Okay.
And I was telling him, it's like, we just left Marie's dad's birthday. And so a bunch of his friends showed up at the birthday, and these are guys he worked with at IBM back in his 20s. Okay. And now they're all in their mid-late 70s and 80s. And there are a bunch of guys just hanging out. And I was just watching that from arm's length and going, you know what, I really hope that's us and our friends.
Yeah.
And where the conversation went with Marie and I was, you know what, we need to be watching what we eat. We need to be getting to the gym. We need to be going for our walks, because that is going to be the foundation of whether we get to be there or
this
not.
Is true. Yeah. Yeah, you get to, again, as we all age, this is a good way to consider things. Yeah, so what you do one day to the next will give you more freedoms or less in time.
Right on. So what I do, again, with pipeline construction,
yes.
There's a very low amount of projects going on right now.
Is there?
There's a super slow area.
Is it?
Yeah. So across the whole industry, a lot of people aren't working out in Western Canada. So that's basically the conversation nowadays.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm guessing you don't feel those same
Yeah, let me try to tie in a little bit of
Yeah.
that, and then maybe ask
Yeah.
questions too. But here's like a narrative that's been part of my world here for a while. But as we sit here in Hillhurst, 10 plus years ago, the as a real estate agent, the draw was in this part. Quick access to downtown, and the downtown core being the epicenter for the oil and gas industry, Calgary, right? So, and much of the sales were driven with the oil and gas community, of course, and yes, continue to be. However, it really shifted in the last 5 to 10 years, as we all know, and as I only know from talking to people such as yourselves, is like, what's the what's the atmosphere like in the downtown? And I've known it's been a very not enjoyable space for a lot of people for quite some years, because it's almost like the heartbeat of the city has been pulled out of it from the workspaces there. And anyways, and so in my world, I guess I've definitely witnessed an evolution in and around here. There's certainly a little bit of tech kind of coming into the city in terms of who are the people buying and selling properties in and around here. Investments, yes. I would say the medical community, like Northwest Medical Centers, of course, from this location, are very well accessed, and there's a lot of doctors and people in that space. But yes, with the oil and gas, we're all connected in this city to the oil and gas sector, and whether we like it or not, have different opinions on it, for sure. But I mean, when that's the feeling that you're experiencing in the pipelines, there's ripple effects into what I'm doing here as a real estate agent too. So things, have always been continuing to evolve, and so I definitely have, as a much of a feeling person, like I get that feeling from the oil and gas community, and I hear of the bright spots and the light spots, and here and there, right? So.
When you went through COVID, like how did that affect the real estate industry? Like without statistics and sales, how did it affect you and how you did your business?
Yeah, like everyone, there was the hunkering down time there, and then I'm grateful that I, as someone for my own purposes, selfishly, was free to conduct my business in a pseudo unusual way, which was just quite simply, though, I could meet with people and I could function as an agent. So I'm grateful for that, because I think that was really hard on a lot of people to just not even be able to do what they could do. So, and I was surprised that there was actually some resiliency. And then, if more than anything, what I think we all marveled with is like all the various factors that occurred from that and through that. I mean, the real estate market has just taken off in Calgary in the last 4 years, more than in the previous 10 to 15 years. Yeah, so how has COVID affected? I mean, I think we're all still taking stock of the ripple effects of that experience. But yeah, I could go on about other things that happened, about ideas, really people questioning lots of different things about what they're doing in their life, and do I really want to live here? And that, so I get brought into all those conversations, and I find that really, impacting and fascinating. Is like many people are going, well, we don't need to live close to downtown. Why don't we move out to the farm? So suddenly I'm showing lots of rural homes and things like this, and seeing people make some big changes. So yeah, it's continues to create lots of change. Again, work from home, Zoom stuff. I mean, a lot of things have been changing there.
Like one thing I've talked to Ray about recently, because she actually is a native Calgarian,
Yes.
and she said, there was a time in my life, she goes, we always say, everyone's from somewhere else here in Calgary. And she said, you know what? She goes, I'm 45 or 44, however old Ray is. And she said, I am a native Calgarian. And she goes, I have a whole generation of people my age that are from here. And I think you're from Calgary too.
Of course.
So how has it changed since because you must marvel at how Calgary has changed since you were a kid.
Yeah, I do marvel, like everyone here. Well, not everyone maybe, but if you look around, it's not hard to be like, wow, the city has evolved. Yeah. First off, I never take like a political stance, let's say, as even in life, though, I call myself a skeptic believer, so I'm not, on a party or a side. And also, as it relates to my business too, I mean, but this is like the current talk, for example, this blanket rezoning to RCG in the city of Calgary, right? So it's like a super hot topic, right?
And bonus it is as well, by the way.
Yeah. So that could be an interesting one to chat about. But as an example, though, it's like we all know we as a city here, we're like 300 years into development in this country, and we have an opportunity here to like design the course of where we're going. And yeah, I would like to say I like to see the expanding pedestrian infrastructure and cycle paths and things like this. You know, Peace Bridge was a great addition to the city, for example, right? So these things, as a local Alberta born and raised Calgary boy, you know, right-wing conservative views as well, it's like I hear so much the sentiments of like, do we really need to lose another lane of vehicle traffic for bike lanes? And I understand the pain of, you know, transit and travel and how important it is to drive our pickup trucks through wide roads, you know. However, I also, like others, have been to Europe and Paris and London, and I was asked this by a developer recently who has, is drawn to say, you know, there's great opportunities with this RCG zoning change to become more of a city of a destination. Is like, how many single family detached houses do you see in those cities when the places you really want to go, you know? So I'm very passionate about other ways of connectivity to improve lifestyle from where you are and, you know, how you are, you know, what your daily needs are, right? So I think Calgary, again, I love the river pathway infrastructure through the city of Calgary, you know, the connectivity to the mountains that is here. And then what I see as like, you know, skyline improvements to like places like the Calgary Public Library and the Music Hall of Fame. These are like award-winning structures that exist in our city that I don't even know that often Calgarians appreciate, like that this is very forward thinking, that in decades and in generations you can be grateful for, like that, you know, some people lived through some pain of kind of cutting back on sort of the, I'm going to say, driving infrastructure. So anyways, that's some of the stuff that's evolved and changed, but you know, it's a fast moving city, and one day to the next you look over and there's a new building here that like I try to keep close watch and I don't even remember what was there. It just got knocked down sometimes, and there's some new something there, right? So
But even driving down South Calgary, I went down to, I think, Mahogany. This would be about a year ago to see some friends.
Yeah.
And as I'm driving south,
Yes.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't even recognize the names of some of these communities.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and yet also we don't need to, like, this is what's when done right, like that Seaton development down there, and it's like there's like I think the world's largest YMCA or something, and if you're living there though, you don't need to be coming in and out of Kensington every day, right? So I know, you know, for those in the inner city complain about suburbia or vice versa. Ultimately, where you are situated, I guess you know, hope that everything connects you to being in the places that you want to be and making your daily life more enjoyable, I suppose. So.
Can you ever envision yourself leaving Calgary?
I could see an evolution of time spent in Calgary, like reduced time.
In the winters?
Yes. I can certainly imagine that. You know, again, right now, like, here my parents are in their 70s, and I think it's interesting now we're all going to be those of us with similar age parents, like what the baby boomer demographic, what are they going to be doing next, you know? And again, I see that as a prelude to some thinking on things, and my parents are in Calgary only 11 months of the year. But, you know, as they've pondered that question, it seems like they ultimately want to be back in the city of Calgary, you know, for, you know, easy access to the hospitals. This is place of origin, family, friends, like, so, you know, I don't know, what is that old saying? Like, you can travel the world and to find yourself, and whatever, all roads lead back home or something, you know, and this is what you were really looking for. So anyways, I'm, as mentioned, I can see so far down the road, and the headlights kind of look so far, and I'm open to things, and at the same time, I'm certainly open to, my roots are here, and I serve here in Calgary, right? So, and I do love the city of Calgary, but I'm also open to being pulled to other places.
Well, what about your kids? What are their plans?
Well, that's yet to be determined. Yeah. So, anyways, Calgary is, I can't see anything changing anytime soon here for me. So, because I'm a pretty habituated person, as mentioned. So, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
That's it? Okay.
It's pretty easy, eh?
Well, wonderful. Well, can I ask you a couple, like, how many of these have you done? And
I'd say this is, I'm not sure I'd have to count. This is your season 2, episode 11.
Okay.
So
well,
I'd
you've
say
done
there's
quite a
probably
few.
about 40 of them or so.
Wow, okay. All right. And
So
these live on YouTube?
These are YouTube and
Okay.
Spotify and LinkedIn and all the different social media for support pipelines. I'm trying to figure out how to get them on Apple Podcast right
Okay.
now. It was started mostly just about 5, 6, 7 years ago, just me filming little videos on my iPod.
Okay.
And just, I got so fed up with, so I got my own political beliefs, of which I have interest in.
Yep.
But it got so frustrating for me when I hear, hey, screw Trudeau. Yeah, definitely screw Trudeau. But like that's all I kept hearing. I'm like, well, this for an oil and gas guy, this actually isn't that helpful. It's just not that. It's not. It's too negative, and I couldn't manage it. So I thought, well, I ended up deleting all the politics off my phone and social media and Facebook. And I thought,
really?
well, I'm going to talk to some different pipeline people and just try to be more positive. So I was talking to Big Dave and said, oh, I'm just doing these little videos, talk to my friends. And he said, oh, well, if you want, I'll buy you some hats and you can give them away and put on his little company logo on them. I thought, oh, thanks, man. And so I've just kind of chipped away at this, never really developed it anywhere. And then this past winter was my first winter in Calgary in 5 years because I've been working up north since 2019.
Okay.
And Marie said, well, I know you like talking to your friends and I like what you're doing. She goes, why don't I try to buy you some better stuff than an iPhone
Yeah.
and kind of talk to your friends? So she went on Amazon and bought all this stuff for me, and Dave lets me sit here and set up and talk to my friends. And the intent, Luke, is to do nothing more than talk to people I find interesting. People, I want to hear people's story. I like people. I think you probably, I share that in common.
Yes.
And so what's the point and the objective? I'm not sure. Talk to friends, spread some positivity, hear people's stories. I think about a couple of years ago, there was a post on, there's like a wellness channel at work, and someone posted on statistics of suicide in Alberta.
Yeah.
That predominantly men in construction. It was like it's 80%.
Okay.
And so I was going for a bike trip out to Revelstoke at the time, and I stopped into Canmore because I was thinking about this message about the statistic. I was like, this is wild. How is it possible we're losing how many people in Alberta every day? These guys are choosing to end their lives. It's wild. So I popped into Canmore, I shot a quick video on my phone, said, hey guys, I heard this statistic, put it on LinkedIn, got back on the bike, got gassed up in Golden, went to Revelstoke. By the time I got to Revelstoke, I had 4 or 5 very personal, wildly intimate messages on LinkedIn, and I was trying to respond to them, and people talking to me about their stories and people they lost their kids or their partners and spouses. And I remember thinking, just that moment. So I'm sitting on a curb, like basically crying, trying to respond to these messages. And I was like, holy shit, how is it possible that there's so many people carrying around this weight of whatever they're dealing with, and they have no outlet, but some random stranger shares a little BS video on the internet, and that's the door that opened for that they need to share it with them. And that made a really profound impact on me. So I thought, well, man, maybe I should start talking about mental health a lot more in our industry, because it is a problem. I assume, Luke, you guys have the similar industry problems that I'm talking about, the mental health stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Do they talk about it?
Yeah, well, it's, how about this? I recognize the same thing that you are recognizing as well. And that's, as my curiosity is, what's this all about? And I've kind of known that's a thread in some of your shares, the bits that I've seen. And so I just applaud that, and I think that's awesome, because going, in that authenticity element of what's really going on, that's an important conversation to have, highly important. So I mean, hey, I've recently even watched through lots of different content on this as well. Watched a guy talk about a book he's written called Men and Boys, I think, or something, but that talks a lot about just, losing your father figures even in the household, to depression and to work, and having almost a generation of fatherless families, and so this has been in my mind here just in the last days. Anyway, so yeah, this is why I'm drawn to just talk about what's really going on, be open to sharing, the realities of, hey, I'm in 12-step recovery, and this for me is a space that has given me the ability to show up in life, with that serenity and joy that, I desire. But then in that world too, that's part of the messaging is like, giving it away. If you struck gold that you can mine, but you can only keep it if you give it all away, right? So paying it forward in some way, shape, or form. So this is a wonderful way to do that. Yeah, and again, I would applaud almost the more long form content. I think is great, because we do have a lot of these little sound bites, but to go deep with someone, and I relate to you because I like that myself. Like, so meaning like have a sit down real conversation, and so tell me what's really going on, right? So I think that's, again, trends on social media when it's like mental health check and whatever. It's hard to navigate man to man often with other guys who are not drawn to depth conversations, right? So yeah, again, I'm just curious sort of what your inspirations have been and then kind of how you're facilitating the conversation.
So that's kind of what probably started more than anything. But I would say I'm just trying to talk about it and just try to, I don't know if normalizing the conversation is the right word, but I can say make it more comfortable to talk about.
Yes.
And my hopes is at some point, if someone is got their back against the wall pretty bad, that maybe they'll reach out and talk and have a bullshit. And I don't know what that looks like. I still don't know what that looks like. But I've talked to a few different people, and again, you and I don't talk a lot. We can be even in private, just very wildly open and honest. But that's more reflective, probably, of our personalities than anything, So I'm hoping, even when I watch your shares on what you're doing for work, I notice you do share a lot of the physical stuff, the fun, the cold plunge stuff. Like, there's a lot more to you, Luke, than just being a realtor. And the fact that you've been willing to be a bit open and vulnerable, like some of your posts on the health stuff, a lot of people might not share those things, So, and I really appreciate it because it does make it more comfortable, because a lot of people are dealing with some really tough stuff, and when you throw it out there, all of a sudden it makes it okay to have some of these conversations.
That's thank you. And I'm just reminded that and actually, believe it or not, I don't really post all that much, but that's why I think it's interesting to know that because I hear this, right? And it's like little snippets here and there over the course of time, but it sticks with people. And what I certainly appreciate is that, also it's the challenge is sharing through the dark times, right? And sharing when it's hard, right? And I'll share this, of course, like in the last couple of years, I've been separated and now in the midst of getting a divorce. And so how to navigate that in the social world sphere, challenging, right? In a lot of different ways. And if I could unplug entirely, I would probably, but it is connected to my work and presence, and networking is what I do. But, to have some way that feels right to you to express what's really going on, and for me, just a couple little bits here and there, but going, this is hard. And that's an understatement, But and then for those who are my real in life people, though, to go deep with those people and to walk through the pain. But if others can see that you've gone through a storm or you're going through a storm, and that you can draw on the tools that, what are the tools that can sustain you through that in order to maintain that, calm and happy. It's possible. This is what I will say, because I've had, death, divorce, and disease affect my life, and debt, all the things, the pain. In my world, we call it the 3Ds of a transaction, is death, debt, and divorce, and that's when it's not the happy parts of the storyline that cause people to transact in real estate, right? And that is a reality for a lot of what's happening here with people, right? So anyways, if we're living life, you're going to go through these things, and then so how to share that, saying, I'm there, I'm in the pain. And people come forth, as you've just shared, like people show up when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. And so if you're feeling that, that it's that irony, it's that paradox that it's in the defeat, there's victory. When you surrender and say, I cannot do this, well, and then suddenly, there's new power can flow through and into you because others show up, has been my experience. So,
But like you've blended, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but you have blended your personal and professional lives, I'd say very well. And I don't think you planned on it
No.
meshing so seamlessly. It just kind of happened. But I think people resonate to authenticity, vulnerability. Like there's no bullshit. Like that's you, Luke, and they see that through the camera sometimes. So I think it's a strength professionally, even though privately I'm sure you just want to just sink away some days.
for sure, yeah.
But you still put yourself out there, and I think all the problems that whether it's death, disease, whatever you said, divorce, oh my
Yeah.
God. So you're describing not just your industry, my industry. That's life, man.
Yeah.
Statistically, that's life, and I think your message, again, it really resonates with people, and all I can do is encourage you. Keep it up, Luke.
Yes.
Like I said, I don't talk to you too often, but I do see what you're doing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, wonderful. Thank you for having me on your show here.
You know,
and,
maybe I'll come again.
yeah, and next time, hopefully, I'll have you on mine.
I hope so.
if my 2025 visions can materialize. So.
All right, sounds
Awesome.
good. Thanks,
Okay.
Lukey.
Peace.